As you may have already noticed, I will sometimes record a video about an article written by someone else some time ago. I thought it would be obvious that just because I read something that has historical importance, like an article about bear roping, that does not mean my perspective is identical with the author who is clearly from a bygone era. It may not have been obvious enough because someone unsubscribed the day I posted that video. I can't make everyone happy, of course, no matter how hard I try. Regardless, this is another historically important article. This time it's about deer hunting rifles. Most American hunters hope someday to hunt moose, elk, or bighorn sheep. They read about trips after such rare game, and they vaguely plan taking a similar jaunt themselves. When they do hunt, however, it's usually for deer. Deer are found, even now, over most of the country, and their numbers are increasing. Thus, Old Cervid is the most important game animal in America. In fact, he is the big game of the country. 9 big game rifles in every 10 are used on deer alone, and a higher percentage of all cartridges shot at big game are shot at deer, as the combination of the deer's brains and the cover he loves so well makes him hardest of all game animals to hit. So every year, thousands of new big game hunters go into the woods after their bucks. Some succeed in getting one, the majority do not. Many of the failures can be laid to poor shooting and lack of experience, but very often these brand new hunters have so handicapped themselves by their rifles, their ammunition, and their sights that it would be almost miraculous if they did hit anything. Now, the great bulk of American deer are dwellers in woods and brush. The Virginia whitetail, which ranges from eastern New Mexico to the Atlantic seaboard, from Maine to Florida, is exclusively so. The little Columbian blacktail of the Pacific slope is notoriously a brush lover. So is the tiny Arizona whitetail of the southwest and the desert mule deer, or burro as the Mexicans call him, of southern Arizona and northern Sonora, Mexico. The mule deer of the Rockies, from the Canadian border to the Mexican line, is more often than not to be found in semi-open canyon country, but even he is often shot in brush. All of these species are nervous, lightly built, and highly susceptible to shock. Compared with the battleship construction of an elk or moose, even the largest deer is but a fragile shell, easily penetrated with a bullet that is easily broken down. So they are easy to kill if you can hit them. Let us take a typical shot at one of these sly, fleet creatures. Not an ideal shot, mind you, but a typical one. Our hunter has been toiling through the woods for several hours. He is leg-weary, arm-weary, and discouraged. So far, he has not seen a deer, and is about convinced that there aren't any. But he keeps on, decides to cross a little valley and try another ridge. Halfway up he hears, over to his right and above him, the rustle of leaves and then the pound of hooves. Looking up, he sees a great white tail held high and jaunty, a flash of gray-brown hide, and a beautiful crown of brown antlers, which to his excited mind look large enough to hang the family wash on. Swiftly he throws his rifle up. For one shaky instant he tries to steady himself and to align the sights. His finger jerks the trigger, the rifle booms, and the buck disappears over the ridge. Frightened yet hopeful, he runs to the top. No buck, no blood, only fresh earth and disturbed leaves where the animal has run. His buck has departed for good. Just what sort of rifle do we need for shots like that? One with ultra-high velocity, accuracy that will put most of a 10-shot string into a saucer at 300 yards, tremendous speed of fire? Not for my hunting. Let me describe the ideal rifle as I see it. Let me say, too, that I am not exactly an armchair expert. I have hunted every species of American deer except the Columbian blacktail. I have hunted them on foot and on horseback, in rough, fairly open canyon country, in brush, in forests, on flats, and on mountain tops. I have hunted where I was lucky to see 3 deer a day, and I have hunted where I have seen 300, and I've come to the conclusion that a good deal has been written about deer rifles is just so much applesauce. First, the ideal deer rifle, like the upland shotgun, should be light. You should be able to carry it easily all day, since deer, over 9/10 of the country, have to be still hunted on foot. It should be light too, so that the hunter can get it into action quickly. Even a pound of weight may cost him a split second of time, and his buck. Hair-splitting accuracy can well be sacrificed for lightness, since most shots at deer are taken offhand, and offhand simply is not a very accurate position. Second, the deer rifle ought to be handy. By that I mean the hunter should be able to throw it up and find that it comes instantly into position. In other words, the stock should fit as nicely as it does that of the quail gun. This may sound like heresy, but the sportsman ought to pay more attention to the fit of his deer rifle than he does that of his long-range rifle. With time you can adapt yourself to almost any rifle stock, but time is something you seldom have in deer hunting. If anything, this ideal deer rifle ought to be a trifle light in the muzzle, as a gun of that sort handles faster on moving game. The muzzle heavy piece, fine for deliberate long-range shots, is an abomination for fast-jumping whitetails. The barrel should be relatively short. I prefer 20 to 22 inches for a lever action and 21 or 22 for a bolt action, because of the longer receiver. Besides being light and handy, the short-barreled rifle is less likely to snag or hit the brush and make noise. Before you buy your deer rifle, practice throwing it up. See if you can align its sights as swiftly as you can point a shotgun. If you can't, try another gun, or have the stock altered to fit you. Pitch, the angle of the butt plate, makes all the difference in the world when it comes to speed of fire. So does the length of stock. A recoil pad, properly put on, can solve both difficulties in a factory-built gun. For instance, I changed a .348 Winchester lever action, which had a bit too much pitch and a stock too short for a rangy person, into one of the fastest handling rifles I have ever seen by the simple expedient of changing the stock length and the pitch with a rubber recoil pad. If you have a gun stock to fit you, be sure that the drop at butt is made just a bit less than you think you'll need. You'll like it, and you'll find your rifle faster in the woods. Try to get a good full forearm so that you'll have something to grab a hold of and swing the rifle by. No matter what the target shots tell you, the left hand is all important in the woods. It's what you swing and point the piece with in shots at deer. Most deer rifles are equipped with open sights, which for fast shooting at relatively short range aren't bad, if they are good open sights. The best employ the shallow V, or simply a rear sight in the form of a segment of a circle with the center marked by a white line, like the rear sight of the fine little Savage Model 99T. With either of these rear sights, there is a tendency on the part of the hunter to overshoot, and overshooting has been the bane of hunters since man sought deer with rifles. Among the worst of all possible sights for quick shooting are those with a sharply angled V, and here's the reason. Anyone with good eyes, shooting deliberately, can do very well with open sights. On running game, however, it is another proposition. The shots are almost always hurried, and 9 times out of 10, the hunter will not pull his front bead down fine into the V before he touches her off. As a result, he overshoots. The old adage of deer hunters, always hold low on a deer, proves my point. There is nothing about deer that makes a man shoot high, but if they are hunted in fall and winter, often on overcast days, and in the woods, the light isn't any too good. As a consequence, the bottom of a sharp V is hard to see, as the light is dim there. The hunter pulls it down so-so, shoots, and misses. Even worse than the ordinary sharply angled V's are the so-called Rocky Mountain rear sights, which are undoubtedly the darndest sights ever invented by mortal man. Their bighorns, looming up, do nothing but cut out the landscape and the game, and dim the light that comes through. A worse sight for deer hunting cannot be imagined. The best iron sights for deer hunting, particularly for a man who no longer sees as well as he did in his salad days, are the various types of peep sights. The ones mounted on the tang of the lever-action rifles and on the cocking piece of bolt actions are the fastest since they are the closest to the eye. Receiver sights like those made by Lyman, Redfield, and Marble are not quite so fast since they are farther from the eye. In any case, the widest aperture is the best, as the secret of using the peep sight in hunting is to look through it, slap the front bead on what you're going to shoot, and fire. For hunting, the various little gadgets one turns up or screws into peep sights for target work had better be left at home or thrown away. They simply cut out light and slow down shooting, rob the peep sight of its virtues. With a peep, a man can forget always hold low on a deer stuff. A low-mounted scope of low power from 2 1/4 to 2 3/4 does very well on a deer rifle. It is about as fast as a good peep, and its light-gathering power often comes in handy late in the afternoon and early in the morning, or when game is in deep shade. However, for woods country hunting, the scope is not the necessity it is for long-range, open country shooting. It is handy, but it is no particular hardship to get along without one. Many authorities recommend automatics for deer. He means semi-autos. I don't like them particularly. In the first place, the automatics necessarily have to contain so much machinery that they are neither light nor handy. If you have 5 or 6 shots at your instant disposal, you are frequently tempted to cut loose. If you miss with the first, you'll often think you can get him with the second, the third, the fourth. As a consequence, the user of the automatic all too often fills the air with lead and hits nothing. Your first shot is the important one. Nearly always it is the best, and if you miss with it, you probably won't hit with subsequent ones. In deer hunting, speed of getting into action is all important. Speed of fire is secondary. Make that first shot count and you'll bring home the bacon. Miss with it and you're sunk in the majority of cases. In mountain and plains hunting for mule deer, sheep, goats, and antelope, you will often have time to empty a whole magazine. In woods hunting, you seldom get that chance. A light bolt action makes a good deer gun, but if I were choosing a weapon for deer alone, I believe I'd pick a lever. The lever actions are faster for that second shot, and the pumps are still faster. The Savage Model 99 RS is a sweet handling, beautifully stocked deer gun. So is the Model 99T and the Winchester 64. The Winchester Model 71 for the powerful .348 cartridge is a lever action fan's dream. In the bolt action, the Model 70 Winchester carbines and Model 30 Remingtons are very nice, but slower to the man who craves speed. So are the light restocked Krags, Springfields, Mausers, and Mannlichers. If you like the Model 141 Remington Game Master pump, get one by all means. Its new and better stock is a great improvement and it can really be shot fast. My own pet brush rifle used to be a little 7mm with a peep on the cocking piece. It had a 22-inch barrel and weighed but a trifle more than 7 pounds. Except for the new Winchesters and Savages, it is the fastest thing that I know of. I have never seen another bolt action I could shoot so quickly. Just now, the reigning favorite in my rack is a Savage Model 99T in .250-3000 with its straight stock, light 20-inch barrel and good open sights and handles like a quail gun. The fact that it weighs only 7 pounds makes it easy to carry. As a matter of fact, the world is full of good deer rifles, pump, lever, bolt, automatic. The one that seems to suit you is the one to use. The deer hunter should select his cartridge as carefully as he chooses his rifle, remembering that he will shoot hastily at moving game, often screened by brush, and that more often than not he will hit non-vital areas. He should also remember that in many cases he will hunt in country where someone is likely to claim his buck unless he puts it down at once. Finally, he should choose a bullet that will plow right on through his deer, producing plenty of blood to trail by. What sort of cartridge does all of this mean? The best will send a fairly heavy, round-nosed bullet along at medium velocity. Any bullet will be deflected by brush, but the blunt, heavy ones stay in the same line of flight somewhat better than the light, sharp-pointed missiles that travel at high speeds. Furthermore, most of the light, fast bullets are designed to open properly at from 200 to 300 yards. At shorter ranges, many of them blow up, giving little penetration. The blunt, big heavy bullets plow on through the game. Many fine deer bullets have come out in recent years, bullets that will expand properly at almost any distance. The Remington Core-Lokt is excellent, and so are the Winchester Western Silvertips and the Peters belted bullets. All have non-disintegrating bases, which ensure adequate penetration and a good blood trail. In actual shocking, tearing, paralyzing power, the slower-moving, heavier bullets cannot compare with high-velocity loads like the 150 grain 30-06 cartridge, the 150 grain 7mm Mauser, the 87 grain .250-3000 Savage, the 150 grain 300 Savage, the 180 grain 300 Magnum, the light bullets for the .257, and so on. With the heavy bullets, the hunter won't get so many spectacular instantaneous kills, but on the other hand, he won't have deer escaping because he has no blood trail to follow. Don't let anyone tell you that the blood trail is not important in woods hunting. It is. Animals are hard to track over stony ground, and even in soft going, other animals often run across their tracks and obscure them. Several years ago, I shot a white-tailed buck with an 87 grain .250 Savage bullet. The animal fell, got up, and was out of sight in an instant. I tried to trail it. There was no blood, and the country there was almost solid rock. I searched for several hours, and then, as it was growing dark, I went back to camp. Bright and early next morning, I was out on a point watching. Presently the buzzards began to drop and guided me to my buck. The bullet had hit pretty far back, penetrated to the lungs, and had blown up completely. The deer had run a quarter of a mile and fallen dead. Though the body cavity must have contained almost a gallon of blood, there was not a drop anywhere on the trail. I saved the head, but the meat was ruined. If I had used a heavier bullet, I would have found my deer within 15 minutes. The deer hunter buying a new rifle should look for more power than he thinks he needs, for the very good reason that in most deer country, the well-placed shot is the exception and not the rule. It is easy to place a shot on a standing buck at close range, but under modern conditions, few bucks are standing. On the contrary, they are usually jumping over down timber or getting behind some brush, or in general getting the heck out of there. The ancient 4440s and 3855s are pretty good deer cartridges at close range. In the hands of good shots, the Winchester 3030 and the Remington 30 series are entirely adequate. The old black powder rifles of the 4570 class are poison, though they are now out of style. The 25 Remington and the 25/35 are good for a fine shot, but light for a dub. The heavy, soft-nosed bullets, like those furnished for the 30-06, Krag, and 7mm Mauser, are deadly. Just what the doctor ordered are the 35 Remington, the 348 Winchester, and the 300 Savage with the 180 grain bullet. All have plenty of bullet weight, sufficient velocity, and worlds of destructive power. Furthermore, the rifles made for them, the Remington pumps, the Savage, and Winchester lever actions, are fast handling and quickly reloaded. What I have written applies to 9 deer areas out of 10. In the parts of the West where deer are usually shot across canyons and often hunted from horseback, the high-velocity rifle with the sharp-pointed, easily expanded bullet comes into its own. Then the ideal deer rifle is also the ideal weapon for sheep, goats, and antelope. High speed, super accuracy, and the weight that goes with them are in order. So are telescopic sights. But in the brush, the deer hunter needs lightness, handiness, and a slug that plows on through game without undue expansion at close range. With such a slug and such bullets, the deer hunter will boost his chances for bringing home that buck just about 25%.